Hello, and welcome to the weekly news currents. This is the week of September 23rd, 2024, and this week we have Campaign 2024 Vice Presidents. Kamala Harris selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. The 2024 News Currents presidential poll, the deadline to cast your vote is October 4th. WNBA star Caitlin Clark and AJ Wilson set new lead records. Clark and Wilson have both had historic seasons. Iconic Frank Lloyd Wright home goes up for sale. The Winslow house was listed for almost $2 million. Rare penguin wins New Zealand's Bird of the Year competition. Yellow-eyed penguins are described as noisy, smelly, and shy. Destination: Monaco. Monaco is one of the smallest countries in the world. This week in history, Mexico issued its Declaration of Independence this week in 1821. Who am I quiz? News, names, places, and words. Faces and places. Where in the world? And member when? The Jeffersons showed America a new image of African Americans. This summer, Kamala Harris surprised many people by selecting this man, Governor Tim Walz, to be her running mate. Why were people surprised? Many expected her to choose a better-known member of the Democratic Party. But since he was selected, Harris and Walz have begun moving up the polls, and the November's election will likely be close. Based on the map, what state is Walz the governor of? Minnesota. Every presidential nominee has to choose a vice presidential running mate. Vice presidents are considered, quote, a heartbeat for the presidency. What does that phrase mean? If the president gets sick or dies, the vice president will take over. The role of vice president has become much more important since the position was created in 1787. Today, vice presidents are seen as advisors to and representatives of the president. The president and the vice president are members of the executive branch of the government. Walz joined the U.S. National Guard when he was 17 years old. The National Guard is a branch of the U.S. military. Its members usually work within the United States, helping with disaster relief and other tasks. Have you ever met anyone in the National Guard? When he got older, Walz moved to Minnesota and worked as a geography teacher and football coach. Like Kamala Harris, Walz is a Democrat. The issues he cares about most are education, workers' rights, and health care. He and his wife, Gwen, have 2 children. Why do you think Harris chose Walz? Who can read this quote here? What does it say about him? Donald Trump selected J.D. Vance as his running mate. Donald Trump also chose a Midwesterner to be his running mate. He picked Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, shown here. What do you know about Vance? Like Walz, many experts think Vance was chosen to help win key battleground states in the middle of the country. Here's Tim Walz. Vance grew up here in the small town of Middletown, Ohio. His family was extremely poor, and he was raised by his grandparents. Vance's childhood was very challenging, and he would write about it later in his best-selling book, Hillbilly Elegy. Do you think difficult experiences can make us stronger? If so, how? After high school, Vance joined the Marines. He served overseas for 6 months during the war in Iraq. When he returned, he went to college and graduate school, and later entered the world of politics. He's been a senator representing Ohio since 2023. Do you think military service would prepare someone to work in politics? Why or why not? Like Donald Trump, Vance is a Republican, but the two haven't always seen eye to eye. In fact, Vance opposed Trump's presidency in 2016, but has since become a supporter. Issues that are important to Vance include immigration, the economy, and childlessness. Vance thinks more Americans should be having more children. Why do you think that issue is so important to him? Who can read this quote here? What do you think will make him a better vice president? The 2024 election poll. The deadline to cast your vote is October 4th. Every 4 years, citizens of the United States get to decide who their next president will be. Who knows when the next presidential election will be? November 5th. Presidential elections are held on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Some people believe that choosing a president is the most important decision Americans make as citizens. Do you agree or disagree? Why? The next president of the United States will almost certainly be one of the two people shown here. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have both been traveling around the country giving speeches and meeting with voters. How much do you know about the presidential candidates? What do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of each one? The popularity of these candidates is measured in polls. What is a poll? It's a survey of public opinion. Have you paid attention to the presidential polls? Who is leading in the polls now? But opinions can change quickly, depending on what happens in the weeks ahead. News Currents wants you to vote for the person you would like to be the next president. Send us your votes by October 4th. Your opinion matters. WNBA stars Caitlin Clark and AJ Wilson set new league records. Clark and Wilson have both had historic seasons. Caitlin Clark is an American basketball player. She plays for the Indiana Fever, a WNBA franchise based in Indianapolis, Indiana. Does anyone here know anything about Caitlin Clark? Who can say something about her? Clark is one of the best-known basketball players in the U.S. today. Clark is a rookie. What is a rookie? An athlete in their first season as a professional. But she has had one of the best first seasons of the WNBA player ever. She recently broke the rookie record for most points scored in a season, and she also set the league record for most assists in a season. She's the favorite to win for Rookie of the Year award. But Clark is not the only WNBA player to have record-breaking season this year. Here you see AJ Wilson. Wilson is a WNBA player for the Las Vegas Aces, where she played since 2018. Wilson is considered the best player in the league right now. She has won 2 MVP awards and 2 WNBA championships. Have you ever heard of AJ Wilson? Do you know any other WNBA players? Wilson recently broke the single season WNBA scoring record, and on September 11, 2024, she became the first player in WNBA history to score 1,000 points in a season. This remarkable season further cements Wilson's place as one of the best WNBA players in history. Do you know any famous sport records? Clark and Wilson have both grabbed headlines for their performances this year. Their achievements, along with increased viewership and fan support, have helped make the WNBA more popular than ever this season. Have you watched a WNBA game? Why do you think the WNBA is getting more popular? Clark is partially credited with the surge in popularity of women's basketball. The WNBA was founded in 1996. How many years ago was this? That was 28 years ago. The first WNBA game ever was played here in an arena known as the Forum. On June 21, 1997, the game saw the New York Liberty defeat the Los Angeles Sparks by a score of 67-57. In the years since its founding, the WNBA has only continued to grow. Today, the league has 12 teams across the United States, and many star players have come through the WNBA as well. Diana Taurasi, who you see here, is the WNBA's all-time leading scorer and a third-time champion. Other legendary WNBA players include Lisa Leslie, Tamika Catchings, and Maya Moore. Have you ever heard of these players? But women's basketball has reached new levels of popularity in recent years. When Caitlin Clark was playing college basketball at the University of Iowa, she caught the eye of sports fans across the country. Her style of play and incredible skill brought millions of new fans to women's basketball, especially during the 2023 and 2024 NCAA basketball tournaments. Did you watch Caitlin Clark play in college? On April 7, 2024, Iowa, led by Clark, played South Carolina in the national title game for the 2024 NCAA women's basketball tournament. Clark was considered the best college player in the country, but South Carolina had gone undefeated all season. The high-stakes matchup drew in a record audience. Around 18.7 million people watched the Iowa-South Carolina final, the largest viewership ever for a women's basketball game in the U.S. Do you remember when this game happened? Did you watch it when it was on? South Carolina won the game by a score of 87-75. Clark announced that she would enter the WNBA draft weeks before the final. She was selected in the first overall pick. Clark's national fame and popularity has been credited with dramatically increasing the popularity of the league. Here you can see the viewership of the WNBA games in 2024 compared to previous years. But other rookies in the league, including Angel Reese and Cameron Brink, also have large fan bases. The popularity of these young players likely mean that the WNBA will only grow in years to come. Do you follow the WNBA at all? If so, did you start following it recently, or have you been a fan for a long time? Iconic Frank Lloyd Wright home goes up for sale. The Winslow House was listed for almost $2 million. Frank Lloyd Wright was one of the most important architects of the 20th century. What is an architect? A person who designs buildings and helps make sure they are built correctly. When he was only 26, Wright got his first job as an independent architect. The job was to create the building you see here, known as the Winslow House. The Winslow House was built in River Forest, Illinois, a suburb 12 miles outside of Chicago. The owners of this house recently put it up for sale. That means some lucky person will have the chance to purchase a piece of American history, but it won't be cheap. The house cost almost $2 million. In his mid-20s, Wright left the architecture firm he had been working for and set out on his own. The Winslow House was his first chance to make a name for himself. The building features a look and design that Wright would have returned to over and over throughout his career. Do you have a style of house that you prefer? Why? A couple bought the home in 2016 and decided to update the inside. They spent nearly $1 million doing so. They hoped to make the house usable for years and years to come so that others might appreciate Wright's work long into the future. You can see the inside of the Winslow House here, but before the update here. What do you think of it? Who can read this quote here? What do you think this might mean, especially when it comes to architecture? Wright remains one of the most important American architects of the 20th century. Frank Lloyd Wright was born in Richland Center, Wisconsin in 1967. He would go on to build more than 1,000 homes around the country and world, but many of his best-known works are in the Midwest. He built many homes in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. Here you can see his home and studio in Wisconsin. Experts consider the Prairie School to be the first American architectural movement. Frank Lloyd Wright designed hundreds of buildings in the Prairie style. What is a prairie? A large open area covered in grassland. One of them, shown here, is located in Madison, Wisconsin. Its official name is the Eugene A. Gilmore House, but people have long known it as the Airplane House. From the picture here, why do you think it has its nickname? It is designed with two long wings on either side of the central area. What do you think of this design? At one point of his life, Wright said, quote, "Study nature, live nature, and stay close to nature. It will never fail you." His philosophy is perhaps best shown in a house he designed in 1935. This house, called Falling Water, is built over the top of an actual waterfall. It is located in Pennsylvania. Although this house is a very unusual shape, it seems to still be a part of the nature. In one survey, architects selected Falling Water as the best design in U.S. history. Would you agree with this? Why or why not? Would you like to live in this house? Why or why not? But Frank Lloyd Wright designed more than just houses. He also came up with the plans for office buildings, churches, schools, and hotels. One of his boldest designs was one of his last. The Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City opened 6 months after Wright died in 1959 at the age of 91. On the outside, it is built like a series of stacked rings. On the inside, it features a long spiral ramp around the open center. Does this look anything like his other architectural designs? Overall, what is your opinion of Frank Lloyd Wright's work? Rare penguin wins New Zealand Bird of the Year competition. Yellow-eyed penguins are described as noisy, smelly, and shy. The penguin in this image is called the yellow-eyed penguin. This bird is easily recognizable because of its yellow feathers, but also by something less pleasant, its strong, fishy smell. This summer, the yellow-eyed penguin was named Bird of the Year based on the map what country hosts this contest. That would be New Zealand. The contest helps people learn about the strange and beautiful birds of New Zealand. During the competition, people can cast their votes online for their favorite bird. This year, over 6,000 people voted for the yellow-eyed penguin. People all around the world campaigned online for the penguin species, including Jane Goodall. Who is Jane Goodall? A famous animal researcher. The winner of last year's competition was the great crested grape, shown in the image here. Comedian John Oliver ran a campaign for the strange bird leading up to the vote. The bird ended up receiving a record-breaking 230,000 votes and was named Bird of the Century. The Bird of the Year contest is important because it shines a spotlight on the threats that New Zealand birds face. Sadly, about 80% of the yellow-eyed penguin's population has died in the last 15 years. Scientists think this is because they can't find enough fish to eat. They also get stuck in fishing gear while swimming. Do you think the Bird of the Year contest helps with conservation? Who wants to read the quote? Penguins' bodies are perfectly adjusted to aquatic life. Can you list all of the types of penguins that you know? There are about 20 different types of penguins. All of them live in the lower part of the world. The little blue penguin is the smallest. It's only about a foot tall. The largest penguins are emperor penguins. They're about 4 feet tall and live in Antarctica. Penguins that live in cold places have thick skin and feathers to keep them warm. In general, male and female penguins share the duty of keeping their eggs warm. They place the egg on their feet and pull a flap of skin over the egg. This flap of skin is called a brood pouch. What other animals have pouches for their young? Seahorses and kangaroos. On land, penguins are known for their waddling walk. They also sometimes slide on their bellies across the snow. This is called tobogganing. The penguins are fastest when they're in the water. Penguins have special wings that are not meant for flying. Instead, they are used as flippers. The penguin's coat helps it blend into the ocean's environment. To predators like orcas, the penguin's white underside looks like the water's surface. The dark feathers on its back camouflage it from above. Penguins are also great at living in the ocean because they can drink salt water. For most animals, drinking salt water is dangerous, but penguins have special glands around their eye sockets that get rid of the salt. Did you know penguins are so well adapted to living in the water? Destination, Monaco. Monaco is one of the smallest countries in the world. Monaco is a country on the southern coast of France that borders the Mediterranean Sea. It is the second smallest country in the world. Does anyone know what the smallest country in the world is? That would be Vatican City. The entire country has a total area of 0.8 square miles, making it smaller than Central Park in New York City. But despite its small size, around 36,000 people live in Monaco. This makes Monaco the most densely populated independent country in the world. Here you can see a street in Monaco. Can you imagine living in a country that is so crowded? How would that make you feel? Monaco is split up into 9 wards, or sections. The largest and most well-known ward in the country is Monte Carlo. Have you ever heard of Monte Carlo? Monte Carlo is famous internationally for its historic buildings and culture. The Monte Carlo Casino is one of the most famous structures in the ward, as the Opera House, which you see here. Many famous musicians have performed at the Opera House in Monte Carlo. French is the official language of Monaco, but in some parts of the country, people may speak a dialect called Monasic. A dialect is a version of an established language that is spoken in one place. British English, American English, and Canadian English are all dialects of English. On this sign here, Standard French is written on top, and Monasac is written below. What similarities and differences do you notice between the two languages? Monaco is a principality. A principality is a country that is governed by a prince. The current prince of Monaco is Albert II, who you see here. Albert II has served as the Prince of Monaco since 2005. What did you learn about Monaco? The House of Grimaldi has ruled Monaco since 1297. In 1297, the man you see here, Rainier I, conquered the Rock of Monaco. The rock is a kind of cliff that forms the historic center of Monaco. Rainier I became the ruler of the rock, and he established the House of Grimaldi. The House of Grimaldi has ruled Monaco for more than the last 700 years. Albert II is a member of the Grimaldi family. Do you think it's impressive that one family has ruled Monaco for so long? The Prince of Monaco used to have nearly all the country's power, but in the early 20th century, many people in Monaco protested and called for a change. This movement is called the 1910 Monegasque Revolution. Eventually, Monaco's prince at the time, Prince Albert I, created a constitution for the country, giving away some of his power. The picture here shows the end of the revolution. Do you think you would have been part of the protest? Why or why not? In 1949, Rainier III took office as Prince of Monaco. He changed the country's economy from one based on casino revenue to one based on banking and tourism. He also married Grace Kelly, an American movie star, in 1956. Have you ever heard of Grace Kelly? Can you name some of her movies? Some of her movies are Rear Window, High Noon, and The Country Girl, etc. Kelly served as Princess of Monaco until her death in 1982. Rainier III died in 2005, and the throne passed on to his son, current monarch Albert II. One of Monaco's most famous attractions is the yearly Monaco Grand Prix. The Monaco Grand Prix is a Formula One car race. What is Formula One? Can anyone say anything about it? Formula One is the world's most popular racing league. The Monaco Grand Prix, where drivers steer their cars through the winding streets of Monte Carlo, is considered one of the most difficult and important races in the Formula One circuit. Today, Monte Carlo is famous worldwide as a tourist destination and as a haven for the world's wealthiest. Monaco has very low taxes, and many well-off people from around the world move to Monaco to avoid paying their home country's taxes. As a result, Monaco has one of the richest populations of any country in the world. In your opinion, should it be legal for people to move to another country to avoid paying taxes? Why or why not? This week in history. Mexico issued a Declaration of Independence this week in 1821. Each year, we observe Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. This is because many Spanish-speaking countries mark their national days from independence during this time of year. From what European country did they win their freedom? Spain. The country of Mexico observes two important days during this time period, marking the beginning and the end of the Mexican War of Independence. What's a revolution? In this case, the overthrow of the governmental system. Many Mexican people had wanted to break away from Spain for years, but the War of Independence is usually said to have begun in 1810. Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla was a Catholic priest from the town of Dolores. During that year, Father Hidalgo, his brother, and many other Mexicans were secretly plotting to overthrow the Spanish government in Mexico. When the Spanish found out about the plot, they killed some of the rebels and arrested many others. On September 16th of 1810, Father Hidalgo rang the church bells in Dolores and gave the famous speech. In it, he asked the townspeople, quote, "Will you recover the land stolen 300 years ago from your forefathers by the hated Spaniards?" What does this mean? That Mexicans should rise up and take their land back from Spain. This cry for independence became known as the Grito de Dolores, or Cry of Dolores. This phrase also has a double meaning, as Dolores means pains in Spanish. Every year, the President of Mexico recites their own grito from the balcony of the National Palace to commemorate this event. Hidalgo's historic speech was just the beginning. The War of Independence continued for more than 10 years. Rebel groups carried out most of the battles against Spanish troops. One rebel leader, Vicente Guerrero, was especially effective. In 1820, Spain sent one of its top raiders, General Agustin de Iturbide, after Guerrero. The two sides struggled against each other for months. In early 1821, Guerrero convinced the Spanish general to switch sides and fight for Mexican independence. Iturbide changed sides because he thought a strong and independent Mexico would be better than a weak Spanish rule. He was also frustrated because Spain paid him very little. Do you think history would be different if Spain had paid him better? The two military leaders met in February of 1821 in the town of Acatempan, where they famously embraced and formed an alliance. Iturbide and Guerrero fought their troops together and promised to fight for religion, independence, and unity. Because of this promise, they named themselves the Army of the Three Guarantees. Together, these soldiers and rebels were able to beat back any Spanish troops that tried to stop them. They advanced for months, growing stronger along the way. Spain knew it couldn't win, and its chief representative resigned or gave up his position. On September 27, 1821, the Army of the Three Guarantees marched into Mexico City with Vicente Guerrero and Agustin de Iturbide at his head. The next day, Mexican leaders wrote and signed the country's Declaration of Independence from Spain. Both Guerrero and Iturbide wound up ruling Mexico in the years that followed their triumph. Did any revolutionary heroes wind up leading the United States after it gained independence? Yes. George Washington led American troops in the Revolutionary War. As you see from the map, Mexico looked very different in 1821. It included just about all of Central America and part or all of several U.S. states. From the map here, what states were part of Mexico at the time? California, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Wyoming and Colorado. For a while, Mexico was one of the biggest powers in the Americas. Why do you think Mexico would be like today if it had kept all this territory? What do you think the U.S. would be like today if the southwestern states had remained a part of Mexico? Who am I? Who am I? I was the Green Party nominee for president in 2012 and in 2016. I grew up in Chicago, then attended Harvard College and Harvard Medical School. As a doctor in Massachusetts, I started to speak out about environmental problems and how they affected people's health. In 2024, I am once again running for president as a member of the Green Party. The Green Party is the fourth largest political party in the U.S. This party focuses on the environment, social justice, and nonviolence. Polls show that many Muslim Americans plan to vote for me in the 2024 election. Some of these Muslim Americans live in important swing states like Michigan. Democrats are also worried I will take away votes for Kamala Harris, so they tried to get me taken off the ballots in these states. Who am I? If you guessed Jill Stein, you'd be correct. News names. Places and words. News faces. Albert II, Prince of Monaco since 2005. Caitlin Clark, professional basketball player in her rookie season with the Indiana Fever. Frank Lloyd Wright, American architect, lived from 1867 to 1959. J.D. Vance, current Ohio Senator and Donald Trump's running mate. Miguel Hidalgo y Castilla, Catholic priest and leader of the Mexican War of Independence, lived 1753 to 1811. Tim Walz, current governor of Minnesota and Kamala Harris's running mate. News places. Illinois, Mexico, Minnesota, Monaco, New Zealand, and Pennsylvania. News words. Architect, a person who designs and oversees the construction of homes and buildings. Brood pouch, a pouch that protects the eggs or young of certain animals such as penguins. Dialect, a specific version of a spoken language, usually based around a region. Executive branch, the branch of the U.S. government that includes the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. National Guard, a part of the U.S. military that handles situations in the U.S. and can be deployed overseas if necessary. Prairie, a wide open area covered in grassland. Principality, a state ruled by a prince or princess. Rookie, an athlete in their first year as a professional. And revolution, when a government is overthrown by force. Faces and places. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. On September 16, 2024, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau suffered a political setback. Trudeau has served as Canada's Prime Minister since 2015 and has led the Liberal Party since 2013. But Canadians are growing more and more frustrated with his leadership, and his approval rating has been steadily going down since his most recent electoral victory in 2021. Polls show that the Liberal Party is on track to suffer a massive defeat in the next Canadian general election, which is scheduled for 2025. And recently, the Liberals lost 2 special elections, only further showing their unpopularity with voters. The second of these elections was for the constituency in the city of Montreal. The Liberal Party had solidly held this seat for nearly a decade, winning it by around 18 percentage points in the last election. This bad loss, following in another Toronto special election, has some questioning if Trudeau should step down before Canadians next go to the polls. Do you think Trudeau should resign before the next general election? Tito Jackson. Tito Jackson was an American musician. Tito Jackson died on September 15, 2024. He was 70 years old. Jackson first gained fame as member of the Jackson 5, a popular Motown singing group comprised of Jackson and 4 of his brothers. The group was headed by Tito's younger brother, Michael Jackson, who went on to have one of the most successful careers in the history of American music. Tito Jackson sang alongside his brothers in now classic songs like ABC, I Want You Back, and I'll Be There. Jackson stayed in the group from its beginning until their final studio album, 2300 Jackson Street, which was recorded in 1989. In 2003, Tito Jackson embarked on a solo music career of his own, playing blues music at live venues and releasing several albums. In 1997, Tito, along with the other members of the Jackson 5, were all inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Jackson died of a heart attack while on a road trip in Gallup, New Mexico. Do you remember Tito Jackson from the Jackson 5? Florida. Former President Donald Trump was targeted in an assassination attempt while at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. This is the second attempt on the former president's life this election cycle, as he was also shot at during a rally 2 months ago. This would-be assassin was spotted by Secret Service agents on the golf course at the estate while Trump was playing. After agents identified and engaged with the threat, the suspect fled the scene. He was later arrested on the highway, about 38 miles away from Trump's estate. He fired no shots but was armed with a semi-automatic gun. The suspect has an extensive criminal history, but many believe he was motivated by his support for Ukraine. He traveled to the country after Russia's 2022 invasion, and he allegedly tried to recruit American volunteers to join Ukraine's fight. Many speculate that he targeted Trump because we believe that the former president was not sufficiently supportive of the Ukrainian cause. Do you think this attempted assassination could impact the election in November? Lebanon. Dozens have been killed, with thousands more wounded, after a series of explosions rocked Lebanon on September 17th and 18th. These explosions were caused by small bombs hidden inside pagers and walkie-talkies. The Israeli military is widely believed to have carried this attack, and in a planned operation meant to target senior members of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an armed military and political group based in South Lebanon. But not all the exploding pagers belonged to Hezbollah commanders, and because the devices detonated on city streets and in civilian areas like grocery stores, many bystanders, including several children, were also killed or badly injured in the blast. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah has strongly condemned Israel's actions, saying that this attack constitutes a, quote, declaration of war. Reports indicate that an increased number of skirmishes have taken place at the Israeli-Lebanon border after the explosions. Do you think this will lead to a wider war in the region? Where in the world? Test your knowledge with this feature. One. Oh. Let's move on. Remember when the Jeffersons showed America a new image of African Americans? The Jeffersons is one of the most impactful TV shows in American history. This show features an African American family that had not really been seen before on television. They were well-to-do, proud to be black, and not afraid to speak their minds, even when they were wrong. Did you watch The Jeffersons? What did you think of it? The show's main cast is shown here. The family patriarch on the bottom right side was George Jefferson. He was played by Sherman Hemsley. Do you remember what George Jefferson did for a living? He owned a chain of dry cleaning shops in Manhattan. Isabel Sanford, shown on the left of this picture, played his wife. What was the character's name? Louise, although George often called her Wheezy. Their son, Lionel, was usually played by the actor shown here, Mike Evans, although a different actor, Damian Evans, portrayed him in season 2, 3, and 4. Can you think of other shows that replaced actors for a little while or permanently? The first one that comes in mind to me is The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Surprisingly enough, Lionel's character came first. He appeared in the very first episode of another classic 1970s sitcom. Do you know what program this was? All in the Family. Were you a fan of All in the Family? Why or why not? Why do you think the show was so popular? The character of Lionel's father, George Jefferson, also started out on All in the Family, where the character of George Jefferson finally appeared. He proved to be just as stubborn as Archie Bunker and almost as prejudiced. These appearances led CBS to think that The Jeffersons would be a popular spin-off show. What is a spin-off? When a popular character from one show goes on to star in his or own TV show. Can you think of any other 1970s spin-offs? There is Maude, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Rhonda, and more. The Jeffersons debuted in 1975 and was immediately popular. Viewers were drawn to George's blustery swagger, to Elise's kind but firm wisdom, and Lionel's creative ways of getting in trouble. The show also gave the Jeffersons many other characters to interact with, including the neighbors Tom and Helen Willis. Do you remember what was groundbreaking about the Willises? They were an interracial couple, but had rarely been seen on TV before then. Lionel later married Jenny Willis. He also met Mother Jefferson, English neighbor Harry Bentley, and others. But the standout character was undoubtedly Florence Johnson, the Jeffersons' maid. Florence and George exclaimed some of the best insults in television, and audiences loved to hear them banter. Do you remember Florence or any other characters from this show? After 11 seasons of making people laugh and exploring sensitive topics, including racism, suicidal feeling, and community responsibility, The Jeffersons was suddenly canceled in 1985. Fans were upset that nothing was ever wrapped up, but the show left a lasting legacy as the longest-running show with the mostly African-American cast in TV history. What else do you remember about The Jeffersons? And that is all today. Thank you for watching.